I am not your normal host and fearless leader, Wole. I'm George, and you are listening to the All Burgundy and Gold Everything, powered by the Urban Sports Scene and Fox Sports Radio, 1340 AM, 96.9 FM, Hopewell, Virginia. Thank you for joining us. And joining me today is a man that the big cat Ernie lad would say is a fine gentleman who just gets the job done. It's Glen. Glen, how is the bye week treating you so far? Thanks for joining us tonight.
Treat me well, baby. As Big Cat Ernie Lad said, you imbeciles, you don't know anything, McMahon. You don't know anything. That's what I love the Big Cat. I love the Big Cat Ernie Lad. And I'm with wrestling references on the wrestling references on All Burgundy and Gold Everything. George, I am fine, enjoying the bye week. Man, it's fun when you're on a bye week and the Washington Commanders win a game. Right?
Yes.
It is fun when you have a bye week and they're living large and they're in charge and they're on top. You know what I'm saying? It is always a great week. I'm glad they snapped the 3-game losing streak because my God, it would have been a miserable bye week if the Washington Commanders had lost 4 games in a row.
Ain't it the truth? But before we get stuck into it, let's get to our particulars. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcast, and iHeartRadio, and all your other podcast platforms. Just search All Burgundy and Gold Everything, 3 R's. Also tweet us at All Burgundy and Gold Everything on X, ABG_everything, 3 R's. You can also find us under the same handle on Instagram and TikTok. So, having done all that, if you've done all that, then you've got to make sure you come on over to YouTube and subscribe to All Burgundy and Gold Everything. Like and subscribe so that we can get these algorithms going in the right direction so that when you search for your Commanders content, All Burgundy and Gold Everything comes up. Plus, you can comment on the show on YouTube if you're watching us there, if you're subscribed. We're also being streamed live on the Urban Sports Scene X handle. You can follow the Urban Sports Scene at Urban Sports Scene. And there's the other fine gentleman who gets the job done. Mo is joining us. Mo, it's great to have you. How's the Commanders bye week treating you so far?
Yeah, it's going well, man. The city is excited, especially going into the bye week with after a W and a resounding W after the 3-game collapse. I think the team couldn't be in any better position, man. The fans are excited. People are kind of itching to get back on to watching them play football. I know a lot of people say they wish there was a Commanders game this week, but let them get that bye week, let them rest up and attack the rest of this calendar.
Makes you wonder how we got through all those bye weeks the last 20+ years with this team being terrible. It makes you wonder. Well, having done all that, let's get into our tradition. Let's get into the pregame. What we're going to do today is we're going to delve into the possible outcomes for these final 4 games for the Commanders and what is the best scenario for the playoffs if they make the playoffs. And that's what we're going to do right here. And what we're going to start out by asking is this. Washington has reached their bye with, as Mo said, a resounding 42-19 victory over the Titans. They are now 8-5. After the bye, they're going to play the Saints in New Orleans, the Eagles at home, the Falcons at home, and the Cowboys on the road to close the season out. With those 4 games, Glenn, I'll start with you. What's the record going to be for Washington in those 4 games?
I think Washington probably would end up, if I had to pick those 4 games based off what we see, based off the Saints, Eagles, Falcons, and Cowboys, I think out of those 4 games, they go 3-1. I think the Washington Commanders end up 11-6, which is not a bad season. I'm not sure who they might bump their head to right now. If I had to pick, they bump their head. One would be the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles look tough. Watching Philadelphia Eagles play just last week, and then Washington played some of the top quality teams that they've played. The Philadelphia Eagles are a tough team. That's the worst outcome that that I'm looking for. If they get all 4, that'd be great. But you want them, to me, in my opinion, the Eagles game is still gonna be tough, man. It's still gonna be a tough game. It's a divisional game once again. Washington has something to prove in that game. The Saints game is not a give. None of these games are give-me's. I want to put that out there too, right? I want to say that now. None of these games are give-me's. We basing them off of what we've seen other teams play, right? How other teams play. The Saints have been able to put up some points. Defensively, they haven't been able to stop anybody. You know what I'm saying? But with Taysom Hill hurt, you don't know that takes a lot away from the Saints' offense power. Derek Carr's been inconsistent all year long. The only most consistent thing they had has been Alvin Kamara, which most people didn't think was going to be consistent this year. But Alvin Kamara has been the most consistent thing for the New Orleans Saints this year. Philadelphia Eagles, they're tough from top to bottom, right? And the Falcons are very inconsistent as well. You got Bijan Robinson, who great running back, but you don't know what Kirk Cousins is going to show up, right? And that team goes as Kirk Cousins go. And we saw last week Kirk Cousins was a 4 interception guy. And you know they at that time when the Falcons may come to Washington, Falcons gonna be fighting for their life in the NFC South. That NFC South is busy is anybody's, right, except for the Carolina Panthers, right? Everybody except for the Carolina Panthers, but the other 3 teams are fighting for their playoff lives in a divisional title. And then with the Cowboys, you saw what's happened last time with Cooper Rush, right? Cooper Rush and teams of Washington's should be on some get back. But I think they will get split with the Cowboys. I think I said at the beginning of the year that it was split with the teams of the division, except for the New York Football Giants.
Before I yield to Mo, I just want to point out that Mo on this show has been a bit of an oracle at times. He has warned myself and he's warned Wole, and quite often his warnings have turned out to be right. So I go to Mo, letting everybody know that Mo's had his finger on the pulse of things quite a few times this year.
Man, I just get to be completely objective because, you know, I don't have as much invested as the rest of the members of the crew, but because when things go good, I can see where the optimism comes from, and when things are off the rails, I can see where the panic starts to come. But I just watch, you know what I mean, because I don't have no vested interest, and I really like the way that Jaden Daniels plays football. I didn't think he would be this good, but since he's been this good, I just continue to watch him and see if I see any progression, you know, just for my own value, man. But man, for the record though, like as Glenn said, like this team can conceivably they should go 3-1 because even I count the game that they'll bump their head at would be Philly because Philly's just so supercharged right now, that's the high-powered offense. It's hard to stop. Also, with the history behind with Saquon Barkley, he typically has like really, really good games against the Commanders, even back to his days in blue. So you add that the kind of offensive firepower that he is this year, and a potential MVP candidate, you know, kind of stake that he's putting up, and you still got AJ Brown on the outside, and when Devontae Smith comes back, by the time this team plays the Eagles, you know, like they'll be back at full tilt. Dallas Goedert. And, you know, it's that point of the year where, like, they got a lot of momentum right now. I think they're on an 8-game winning streak. So that's the game that I would say is the one that's not in the Commanders' favor. But the next one that I think could be a possible hiccup, because I think they're going to beat the Cowboys for sure. They handled them pretty well the first time. And I believe, I think they'll beat the Cowboys for sure this time because of how the other game ended. And now that they got some momentum and they got a bye week before they get to go see them, I think there's a lot of room to watch that tape, come out better, come out faster, and, you know, just put their foot on the Cowboys. So I'm going to go with the Falcons game is where I think it could be a sneaky loss. For all the reasons that people don't consider it, like that point of the year, Atlanta's going to have a lot to play for in that division. Kirk Cousins is going to be back in Washington. There is some kind of element there. I believe he played very well the last time he was here. With that, I think the Falcons just have a lot of offensive firepower. And Bijan Robinson, Drake London, even Darnell Mooney's having a great year. Kyle Pitts also. So I think that could possibly, I think there's one in a possible losses here because if you look at the numbers, Commanders should win that game also because of where their offensive rankings are compared to the Atlanta defensive rankings. And they're on the plus side of the defensive rankings as it relates to Atlanta's offense. So, you know, that's where I see a possible 2-2. But I think it's safe to say that this is a 3-1 team going down the road.
Well, both of you guys saying 3-1 would mean an 11-win season for the first time since 1991 when they won the Super Bowl, and that would be a cause for celebration around the DMV and Commanders Nation. Wole is not here, and even though he is back on his pick against Washington for the good juju, which has worked a lot this year, so everybody don't be coming at him. Don't be coming at his neck for that because it's worked. I'll be that guy. I think Washington will run the table.
Ooh.
And here's the biggest reason why. This was a team that was clearly affected by not having a bye until now. They were running on fumes. We talked about it after the Cowboys game. We kind of talked about it after the Eagles game. They were absolutely worn out at the end of both those games. They made big mistakes. They struggled, with whatever it was, whether it was Saquon breaking loose on them in the fourth quarter or that absolute meltdown in the special teams. This was a tired team, and you could come back at me and say, well, they were a tired team too against the Titans. They jumped the Titans at the start, and the Titans made a bunch of mistakes early, and so it was 28-0. It was 28-0. What was it? 1 minute into the second quarter. So that fatigue factor really couldn't play in. This bye is the panacea. They're going to get Marshawn Lattimore back. It looks like he's going to play. That is a huge addition to this secondary. Jaden, who was already looking better, playing better, and looking healthier, is going to be a lot healthier than he was the first time against Dallas and the first time against Philadelphia. That makes that offense more dangerous. And you have the emergence of Chris Rodriguez as an alternative to Brian Robinson, whether it's because Brian Robinson's hurt or because he's just the next best guy who should be out there when Brian Robinson isn't getting carries. I think Washington is primed, and I think they can be very dangerous in this playoffs if they can win these last four. And let's be honest, the Saints can be dangerous, but they're a bad team who's playing out the string. I think the Falcons are done. I think what happened last week has probably cooked them because they should have beat the Chargers. Tampa Bay's got a pretty cake schedule down the stretch. I don't think the Falcons are going to win this division. They lose the next couple. The Bucs win the next couple. They're going to be just about dead and buried when they come to Washington. And Dallas is going to be thinking about their holidays. And after what happened the first time, those players could almost not show their face in D.C. again if they lost them again. So I'll be that guy. I'm saying they win 4 games in a row. But, Glenn, you're up next because you've got a very interesting question for us.
Yeah, before we get to the next question, I want to say this. You mentioned a key part there. You talked about Chris Rodriguez. You talked about Jaden Daniels getting healthy, but you missed one thing, right? Brian Robinson Jr. still was not 100% last week, even though he ran very well, right? He was not 100% healthy. And so when you getting a Brian Robinson who's getting healthy, but also let's not forget you're getting an Austin Eckler, right? You're getting an Eckler who will be back by that time. All right,
no,
so
he's on
back
IR.
from concussion protocol.
He's on IR.
He's on IR. So he got 4 weeks. All right, he won't be. They put him on IR, so he
could be back for the Dallas game, I think.
Man, he's done for the season. He should not play no more this year.
Yeah, but we said that about Tua as well. It is a fair point, but we said that about Tua, and Tua came back and played as well. So
yeah, and I'm with Mo. I don't think Tua should have played either, but that's me.
Yeah. All right. So you have a good mix of guys who are getting healthy coming back. We talk about Coleman. You got guys on the offensive line who's getting healthy. It's coming back as well. So this team is poised for a good run, right? Paul said, yeah, he is done. Hey, if he's done, you know what? He said he gave us the best 11 games he could give us, right? It was the best 11 games he could give us, and he helped this team win football games. All right.
Yes.
What record do you think they need? Here it is.
Because I'm interested in what you think of this. Let me ask that one. What record do you think they need? I know we predicted what we think they're going to win, right? What record do you think they need in order to make the playoffs out of those 4 games? Because of
They
what we
need
said
11.
about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and other teams that are on the hunt still.
They need 11. They need 11 games. In my opinion, they need the 11 games. 10 will be iffy. You wait until the end of the season, but I think they do need the 11 games, right? As we record this, the Green Bay Packers are losing. As I mentioned last week on the podcast, is on a post game show that the NFC West is going to beat each other up. They're going to beat each other up, so their records may not get to where they're at, but one of them have to get into the playoffs, right? So one of them have to get in. So Washington will either have a 6 or 7 seed. You really want to move up. To me, if they get 11 games, even if they get to 10, the quicker they can get to 10 games, the quicker they can solidify their playoff spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want them to get to 10 as quick as possible, because if I think 10 is the magic number. 11 guarantees you in, right?
Yeah.
So if they get 10 within the next 2, I think it'll be a lock for them.
George.
I'm in complete agreement with Glenn. I think 10 is almost a certainty, and I'll tell you why. Because there is only one scenario where they could win 10 games and miss, and that would be if Tampa and Atlanta win 10. Because in that scenario, Atlanta would win the division. Tampa Bay would be in the wild card pool. We lose the wild card tie. We would lose the tiebreaker to Tampa. Having said that, there ain't no way in the world both of them are winning 10 games. And I'll add this. I think that there's actually a possibility, especially if Arizona wins this weekend, that you don't even get a 10-game winner out of the NFC West either. You might get one. And if Seattle wins this weekend against Arizona, it's probably them. But I don't see any way in the world that both Atlanta and Tampa are winning their last 5, especially Atlanta. Because, I mean, those folks down there have about had it with Kirk Cousins, and they're talking about Michael Penix. And you can sit there and say, oh, it's just the fans. It doesn't matter. It does matter. They're all feeling the pressure. And let's be honest, if you watch those highlights, and I watched them, yes, their kicker missed some kicks. Kirk Cousins cost them that game Sunday. Because there was at least 2 or 3 times they would have had gimme field goals if he'd have just thrown the ball away instead of throwing the ball where he did and it getting picked off. Plus, there was a pick 6. Nobody's going to convince me that Atlanta's winning 4 of their last 5. Tampa, they got a good schedule. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And Tampa would be a real fly in the ointment if they get in the playoffs, because they're still the only team to beat Detroit as of now. But Atlanta ain't winning 4 of the last 5. And I think Washington can pretty much put an end to it when they play them. So for me, it's 10 for sure. 10 is going to get you in almost 100%. 11 is a certainty. And at that point, if you can get to 11, you might get above Green Bay, which is what you want to do.
And I'm gonna put my man Paul up here. Paul said it on Sunday, and I think this is his. Yeah, it is. Like he said on Sunday, they only can get 6. They only can go up to 6. They can't get anything other than the 6th place. All right,
Mm-hmm.
6th seed. Sorry, they only can get anything other than the 6th seed. That's the highest they can go. And George, we talked about it before we came on air. 6 wouldn't be that bad for them. 6 would be good for them.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
6th seed for Washington would be a great spot for them and a good potential run at the 6th seed. Won't get any home games, but who cares? They have a good run at the 6th seed.
And they got a potentially favorable matchup. I would not be afraid of going to Seattle if that's what it was going to be. That wouldn't bother me. And honestly, the other reason to get Green Bay in the 7th seed is that Green Bay would be a chance in Philadelphia. They were pretty unlucky not to beat them in Brazil. I know that was Brazil and that was week 1. But I would give Green Bay a chance to win in Philadelphia in the playoffs if it came down to that. So to me, that's the other portion of that. Glenn, you had another question for us?
Yeah, here we go, man. And look, it looks like Marshawn Lattimore returns after the bye. What do you think his impact will be on for the remaining 4 games? Mo, we start with you.
Marshawn Lattimore. I just think that a lot of people are expecting the guy of old, and they believe that he was so good before that no matter what shade of him they get right now is an improvement. And because of how inconsistent some of the DBs on the team already have played, it should be an upgrade. But I'm a little weary of his health situation now. He hasn't been healthy. He hasn't finished the last 2 seasons in New Orleans. And they had some young corners come up that they drafted that came in and played well. So like there's been a knocking down of the Marshawn Lattimore peg coming into here. So hopefully the new team gives him newfound energy and he can find his footing, because he hasn't played in a while. He hasn't played since right before the trade, because he didn't even play the week before the trade. He was out that game, so he has to come to a new system, new defense. Probably not that difficult for the level of player that he is, but he's playing against his old team when he first comes back. Then he has AJ Brown, he has CeeDee Lamb, so it's not like he has an easy stretch going down the pike. So I would be weary to think that he's just going to come in and be really, really dominant. Is all I will say. I just want, if I had to have a different take than most people.
George, your thoughts?
I want to ask Mo this question, and actually you too, Glenn, and open it up to everybody. How concerned or worried should I and every other Commanders fan be about him re-injuring himself? Because he's missed, I want to say it was more than 1 week before the trade. It was like 2 or 3, and people were speculating, he's making a business decision to hold himself out to get out of New Orleans. But it's pretty clear that he was seriously injured, because we all thought he was at least going to play before the bye, and he didn't even do that. So he's been out 6 or 7 weeks. How worried should we be about him re-injuring himself? Because I think his impact is significant in that he's going to take an elite wide receiver, and thusly, Mikey doesn't have to face the number 1 guy. Benjamin St-Juste is finally down the pecking order a lot further. This secondary could be improved, but my nightmare scenario is he gets out there and he gets hurt, and then you take him away, and then we're back to square one.
No, I mean, that's why I mentioned what I mentioned. That's why I said I'd be wary. Hamstrings are tricky injuries. I'm a former track runner in college. Like, hamstrings are pretty tricky. If you go too soon, you have a massive probability of re-injuring it. So I think that's why they took all the time that they needed. They had to be cautious because they want to make sure that he's good for the last 4 games. But, you never know, because, he plays a position where he's reactionary to what is happening in front of him. And he's going to need all of his mobility and fluidity in order to be who he needs to be against these top flight receivers. And when he goes to go play his former team, who knows him better than him? I'm sending, Glenn knows this on the field, we see somebody with their hands down or we know they got an injury over there, we sending you deep often. We're going to test that hamstring out early. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but that's how that typically goes. So it's not as concrete as I think some people want to make it. I know that the hope is that he is good because he's taking some time off. And then, like you said, the pecking order can take place and that should make it more improved. And that's an added element to this team. But it's just hard to do that with hamstring injuries and somebody that has a history of these already and has missed multiple seasons. He has missed the end of the last couple of seasons coming into here. So this would be the 3rd year that he's missed majority of the games.
Yeah, but what I want to say is that the Washington Commanders said it when they drafted him. They didn't care if he played this year or not.
Oh, when they traded for him.
When they traded for him. Sorry, not drafted, traded for him. When they traded for him, they said they didn't care if he played this year or not. And that was a statement, right, George? That was a statement.
Yes, it
was.
Wanted
to make sure
a big statement.
That was a statement. Big statement. So they wanted to make sure that he's 100%. I don't think we see him unless he's 100%, right? I don't think they take a chance on him unless he's 100%, unless he can give him their best. And whatever their best is. He's been practicing. He's been walking through things. He got an extra couple of weeks. And I think this coaching staff and his organization is banking on him to be at top level against the Saints. And if he's not at top level, and I think if Dan Quinn, Joe Witt don't think he can go, he won't go. I think they would just live and die with who they have. And I think we as fans and reporters and journalists will just have to accept that. We want to see him, but at the end of the day, put him out there when it's helpful for the organization. Not harmful, but helpful. And also was helpful for the player. So, again, we'll see how they're working with him and see how you get him, And so that's one of the things if he comes, he plays, great. If he doesn't come, and plays, I think that this Commander team still will be okay.
That
You know,
I would agree with you there, but I think, and I know some of it's been fan driven and maybe and media driven, but we've had such struggles in this defensive backfield, and we were so desperate for somebody that we could all kind of rally around, and Mikey's going to be that guy eventually because of how good he is. I really hope that Lattimore has a major impact because it's been hard to watch this year. We're watching a certain guy whose name we're not going to bring up because he's been talked about entirely too much on this show for how terrible he is. But it's been disheartening to watch him get, burned over and over again, and even watch some of the ones that have been good, like Sanders, still get burned over and over again. So, I really am hopeful for Lattimore because, it's been tough to watch this secondary struggle like that all year. I want to go to Mo here because he's got some interesting questions about the schedule because I think we'll get some interesting answers with these next couple of questions that he's got.
So, gentlemen, we talked about the schedule. We talked about the record. I think we kind of hinted at this earlier. So let's get right into it. I want to name names. Which team off the schedule is the toughest team for the Commanders and why?
It's most certainly Philadelphia for all the reasons we've talked about.
Toughest team on the schedule is Philadelphia. Yeah, it's Philly. Philly's the toughest team on there for every reason that we gave.
I think that's the unanimous decision.
They're clicking on all cylinders.
They're
clicking on all cylinders, man. You think about it. We talked about.
I'm
sorry. Sariati at the beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm.
No, at the beginning of the year, we talking about him. Now he's potentially, the second half of the season, Philadelphia has done great things. Not only Philadelphia, but if you look what they've done, Saquon Barkley is an MVP candidate right now, right? Saquon Barkley is that guy who can really win the MVP, comeback player of the year, whatever you want to call it, because because when he was in the New York Giants, Mo, he was disappearing, right? He was disappearing. Saquon has revitalized his career. Saquon could end up being a leading rusher. Saquon could have the most touchdowns. Saquon could be that guy. And Saquon, if Philadelphia fans can say it, they may not want to say it. Saquon Barkley has put the Philadelphia Eagles on his back, and he's riding them to the playoffs because prior to Saquon Barkley running the football, this Philadelphia football team looked terrible. For the first 3 weeks.
You are preaching from the same psalm book as me, Mr. Glenn, because for me, he should be the MVP. The problem is the people that vote on this award, like some of the other awards, they just can't see past a quarterback and don't have any nuance because your last point is your best argument for Saquon. That team was spinning its wheels before the bye. They were not giving him the ball. They were at each other's throats. And I kind of still think all you need is one loss and they're going to kind of fall apart a little bit because that locker room has got a lot of tension in it. But Saquon's kept that thing together. He's run the football. He's made all these amazing plays. Who was it that won that game for them in the fourth quarter against Washington when they couldn't do nothing for 3 quarters? It was Saquon Barkley. And yeah, Philadelphia is the toughest team, and I hate to give them credit. They clamped Lamar Jackson on Sunday. Totally clamped him. He had a touchdown right at the start of the game, and then he did nothing for 3 quarters. And that's kind of the other worry is that Philadelphia's defense has come to the party the last few weeks after being carried by that offense for a lot of games. So they definitely are the toughest team on the schedule for me. I think, like you said, Mo, I think it's unanimous. I mean, they're the ones that have won, 9 straight games, right, or whatever it is, 8 or 9, and they're going for the number 1 seed too.
No, absolutely. I think for that last point was what I was going to hold on to when I was going to make my point about Philadelphia's the improved defense under Vic Fangio.
Mm-hmm.
It took a minute for the system to play and for him to get his pieces together, but they're clicking on all cylinders right now. So, as we predicted, as we said earlier, that's a unanimous decision. On the flip side, who of the remaining 3, since we named Philadelphia as the strongest or the toughest team left, who is the weakest team left on the roster? On the schedule, I'm sorry.
For me, it's Dallas. And that just speaks to how bad that first loss was. But we all know what's going on there with the injuries and everything else. And in fact, that you're playing them week 17 at home where they've only won once all year. And let's be honest, most of their players are going to be thinking about what I was talking about last week. They're going to be thinking about where they're going as soon as the season is over, what Caribbean island they're going to visit and drink some Mai Tais and relax or whatever. It's got to be Dallas. It's got to be the weakest team on there, even if it is a rival.
That Dallas game could be a blowout game if Dallas had already tanked it and sucked it in. Right? They don't have anything else to play for. They might already be in the Travis. They have potential to be in the Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders watch. And people said nobody tanked at that point. Sometimes the players don't tank. Coaches make a difference, right? We saw that with Philadelphia coach where they took Jalen Hurts out the game and they put in whoever insert whatever. Can't remember the quarterback's name. Nate Sudfeld, and for whatever reason, right? And so we can see that Mike McCarthy might be coaching his last game in Dallas, right?
Yeah.
So that game could be a potential runaway game for Washington. And then again, depends on where Washington at. We may not see all the starters. If Washington already has a 6 seed locked up, it might be a throwaway game.
It's the Saints. We can't say that the Cowboys is the weakest because the team just lost to them, technically, right? So I'm gonna go with the Saints. You look at the Saints; they're injury depleted. They just lost another major piece this week in Taysom Hill. They lost Latimer at the trade deadline. They've looked really bad at times this year. They've looked good early on. They're trying to find their groove again. Derek Carr's doing that Derek Carr thing that he always does. You know what I mean? So right now, the Saints. This is how bad the rest of the Saints are. And Alvin Kamara leads the team in both receiving yards, receptions, and rushing yards.
Hey, leave him alone. That's why he's on my fantasy team, and I picked him this week.
Hey, I pick him up every year in fantasy, Glenn. I let everybody go do all that foolishness. But outside of him on offense, the cupboard is really dry. Olave's hurt. Shaheen is hurt. I think the only receiver they have that's notable right now is Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck with him being your number one, right? Their defense is also imploded. They're bottom 5 ranked defense this year. So with this high-powered Washington offense, especially what Washington likes to do, run the football. Brian Robinson and Chris Rodriguez's emergence over the course of the last week to get and Brian Robinson getting the week to get a little bit more healthy. And they're playing in the dome. So temperatures are controlled. I like to think that the Saints are the worst. Oh, and Chase Young is on the other team. He's going to get past the defender and lollygag his way to a quarterback. So you don't have to worry about that either. So when you
I
add
was
that
hoping
element to it,
I was hoping we could sneak through talking about the Saints without bringing him up.
I had to before Glenn did.
You know I have to. Anyway,
I know.
That's next week.
I was like, I'm gonna try to skate through the Saints and maybe we can leave old Chase alone for 1 week. I do love what Paul said. Paul, we had it up earlier, his comment about that the Cowboys and the Saints and the Falcons are tune-ups and that the Eagles are the measuring stick. I love Paul's confidence. Tune-ups. He loves it when we tune up with some people. Certainly tuned up the doggone Titans last week.
Paul, speaking of Paul had a question. I'm going to put another question up here, and I want you guys to answer. What side of the bracket do we need to be on to miss the Lions in the divisional playoffs? You don't, because what happened, they take the lowest seed. The NFL is one of the organizations or one of the few leagues to actually take the low seed and playing with the high seed. So if Washington is the lowest seed in, they will face the number 1 seed. Depends on how everybody else plays. So they flop things, Paul, and they move things around. So if the 7th seed somehow loses, 7th seed loses and they're out, and the 6th seed is left, Washington could play the Detroit Lions in the second round.
Yeah, they would either play the Detroit Lions or Philly, depending on whoever is not.
Yeah.
And you don't want either one of those two games.
Well, you end up playing Detroit because Detroit will get the bye if Philly doesn't get the bye. Because no one seed gets the bye. And 2 and 7 plays. So if you're 6, and you hope the 7th seed wins, then the 7th seed will have to play the 1 seed, and then the 6th seed will have to play the next higher seed that's there.
That ain't happening.
Don't count Green Bay out if they go the ones going to Philadelphia. Let me just throw that out there.
Yeah,
throw that out there. Green Bay at Philadelphia. And remember, Green Bay won as a 7th seed last year, and they were worse last year than they are this year, in my opinion. So don't rule that out. Don't rule that out. We'll watch that space, but of course the first thing is Washington's got to get ahead of them. And I
got to see Philly lose a game first. When I see
them lose a game, fair enough.
When I see them lose a game, then I can come back to reality on them. Outside of that, they don't even have Devontae Smith right now.
That's true.
Yeah, put it in context.
Hey, before we wrap up here and get out, we got another. Here's the other one I want to think. Other than Jaden Daniels, which player needs to be him down the stretch? Right. Other than Jaden Daniels, which player needs to be him down the stretch? There's 2, in my opinion, needs to be him. Right. Down the stretch. One is Brian Robinson Jr. needs to be healthy down this stretch. Right. He doesn't need to miss any more football games, and he has been in and out, in and out. When he's in, this team runs on all cylinders, right? When he's out, they struggle a little bit, right? So he needs to be him on the offensive side of the ball besides Jaden Daniels. And on the defensive side of the ball, the guy that needs to be him needs to be Frankie Luvu, right? I want to say the linebackers, Bobby Wagner, Luvu and Wagner needs to be him, and they need to get more pressure than they're getting on the quarterbacks. What we have missed, and we probably can talk about this later too, what we have missed, we have not talked about the defensive line much, right? Mm-hmm. We haven't talked about Deron Payne making those money since Jonathan Allen leaving. People talk about I'm just saying, we don't
if Wole was here, he'd be having to hear it from Mo right about now.
I'm just saying, but that's a whole nother conversation. But again, that is something the defensive line needs to be Deron Payne or Frankie Lou. Those guys need to be him because when you go into the playoffs, teams like to run the football. Teams like to run the football. Is your December months, your January months, and that D line needs to be, those are people that need to be him other than Jaden Daniels. You guys thought who needs to be him other than Jaden Daniels?
Go ahead, George.
I'm glad you brought the defensive line up because since you mentioned Luvu, I was going to mention the defensive lineman who needs to be him, and that's Dante Fowler. Dante Fowler has been productive. He had the huge game. What was it? The one game where he had to pick and ran it back for a touchdown and had like a sack. And he's had some other big moments. But you're right, Glenn. We have not consistently gotten pressure on the quarterback. That we blame the secondary for a lot of things. But that's been part of their problem, is we haven't put the quarterback on the ground. As Katie Waller says, we haven't gotten the quarterback's jersey all marked up and dirty. That's what she talks about when she comes on this show during pre-games on Sunday, which you should be watching, by the way, because we pre-game every Commanders game Sunday, Monday, or Thursday whenever they play. And Dante Fowler is somebody – Dorrance Armstrong could be another candidate, but for me, Dante Fowler needs to be him because we need to get to these quarterbacks. We need to get them under pressure because that's where the turnovers come. That's what we've lacked. Although we had 2 of them against Tennessee on this past Sunday, which was good. If we're going to do anything in these playoffs, if we're going to pull any upsets against a Philly, or Detroit, or somebody else, we need the pressure, we need the turnovers, and we need Dante Fowler to be him.
I'm going to go with the guy we talked about earlier. I'm going to go with Marshawn Lattimore. If Marshawn Lattimore comes back and he's healthy and he's him, this defense is already better than most people think, even though with the woes is ranked number 16 in the league. This defense could take another step. If this defense can get to a top 10 level, it'll have an offense and a defense in the top 10. For all the things that we already know about Marshawn Lattimore, when healthy, he has been a lockdown Pro Bowl type corner, who will win most of his matchups or does very, very well in his one assignment to make the overall defense better. And I think that would be refreshing going into the playoffs, because I'm thinking about playoffs longevity and actually actualizing the full potential of this team. If Marshawn Lattimore is him, I think you can count for a playoff win. And you can count for a playoff win if he's him.
It is. Paul agree with you. Well, Paul says, Paul agrees. He told me, he said, nah, Glenn, Lattimore needs to be him. If he's here, he needs to be him. But right now, until he steps on the field, I gotta go as if he's not even there. I gotta go as he there until he shows up.
I respect that.
Michael Underwood said there's no drops from receivers. Play Diami more in the scheme and stop the run on defense. That's what needs to be.
Yes,
them. All those things need to be them in order for this team. Paul also says Diami Brown needs to be him, which we saw glimpses of what Diami Brown could do on Sunday.
Diami Brown needs to be them first.
But he does need to get more chances, though. He does need to get more chances, though. Diami Brown
get more chances now when you have a receiver hurt. So Noah's hurt, and so you got a receiver that's there. All right. I sometimes I am that guy, and some guys, you guys are gonna get mad at me here in this chat. But is there a world, right? Is there a world? I'm playing devil's advocate. Can you see in the world? Is there a world that the Washington Commanders drop all 4 of these games?
Man, why do we even got to put that energy out there? Why do we even got to entertain it? Because, oh gosh, unfortunately, when you lose a game like what they lost to Dallas, then you at least have to entertain that possibility. Because I think, as we've said many times on this show since that day, if you can lose to them, you can lose to anybody, especially them. Cooper Rush, Cavani Turpin, Rico Dowdle, all getting their stuff off on you. Yes, we have to at least entertain the possibility, because unfortunately, while a lot of things from the previous regime and terrible past of the Commanders has been buried, not everything was buried, because you had a game like the Dallas game. That was very much a throwback to the previous 10 years under both Rivera, Callahan, Gruden, and anybody else you want to name. So the scenario is Jaden reverts back to what he looked like when he was injured. Cliff gets way too pass happy, and this defense wears out at the end of games, and that would be how they go 0-4, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't think they, in my opinion, I don't think they can go 4. I don't think they will lose 4 games in a row. I don't think
that's wild work.
That when people are calling for heads, right? If they lose 4, it has to be an injury. Somebody's head is going to roll, right?
Ooh.
Somebody's not going to be there. And I'm going to say it that way. If this team has a major collapse in the next 4 weeks, somebody's head is going to roll. I don't know who. It depends on how they look. If it ain't offensively and they look terrible next 4 weeks offensively, Cliff Kingsbury might be that guy, right? If it's defensively, Joe Witt may be that guy. This team cannot go to lose 4 games in a row. Now, with that being said, I'm going to get all the bad juju and the bad voodoo and all that other stuff out the air, right? We're not even going to talk about trap games. We're going to talk about none of that. We're going to talk about, as the fact is, that the Washington Commanders are going in their bye week, had a major win, and this team looked like they continue to roll, right? This team looked like they would continue to roll here in the second half. Well, I can say second half, the last quarter, right, of the season, right? The last quarter of the season. George, Mo, who we said Jaden Daniels will be him. And when it's all said and done, who will be the dude in Washington that you say, you know what? When you look back at the season, you said that guy right there is the reason that Washington is 11-6, 10-7.
It has to. The question has to be outside of Jaden Daniels.
Outside of Jaden Daniels. Outside of Jaden Daniels.
Outside of Jaden Daniels, I'm going Frankie Louvu. I think he's the defensive MVP of the team. I think he's been the most consistent player from game one to game last. I think he brings the juice on defense. He plays multiple positions in the defense. He's like in a Micah Parsons kind of role, and just he's not the quality of player, but like he's, in the role, and he plays well. He plays supremely well. He plays really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
His versatility has helped the defense a lot. I've seen this man chase people down 30 yards down the field and knock them almost concussed, stopping touchdown. So I say Frankie Louvu.
George.
I'm also going to go a defensive player, and because of the positive impact of Marshawn Lattimore, the guy we're going to be looking at who could be that dude for this last quarter of the season is Mikey Sanders-Still. Mikey Sanders-Still is one of our only playmakers in that backfield, and I think we're starting to see that when people throw the ball at him, he's not only going to make plays, he can create turnovers. And now that Lattimore's on the field, and if he's healthy and playing well, they're going to challenge Mikey Sanders-Still, and I could see him getting multiple interceptions down the stretch, and he ends up being a major contributor and a guy that we remember for this last month of the season.
What about the whole season, though? I think the question was around the whole season.
Oh, the whole season. Oh, gosh. The whole season? You know what? I'm going to say Joe Witt, because where this defense has come from to where we think they could be, they were struggling. We were not winning because we played great defense. We were winning by outscoring everybody.
True.
And we were all looking at this defense halfway through the year going, Joe Witt, what's going on? Glen, Wole was like, hey, you come over here with this reputation and developing talent, and the secondary's getting strafed, and we're struggling to stop the run. We're struggling to get pass rush. If we look back at this season, and especially if they do well in January and make a run in the playoffs, Joe Witt's got to be the guy that's going to get a lot of credit, because that defense will have improved, and he will have done a lot of great work, him and Dan Quinn both, to give us a defense good enough to compete in the playoffs.
Me, I'm usually go defensively. I usually will also go with a running back, but I'm going to agree with my man Mike here. It has to be Terry McLaurin. To me, Terry has reasserted himself this year, and he reestablished himself for this team that he is the number one, right? That he is the guy in Washington, right? Last year, this time, we don't even know Terry McLaurin is going to get 1,000 yards receiving, right? We didn't know if Terry McLaurin has already set his most touchdowns in the season, right? He's setting records now. And guess what? He's done it with multiple quarterbacks in the past, but now he has a quarterback can get him the ball. And some of the passes that Terry McLaurin caught this year and from Jaden Daniels, and where Jaden Daniels has put some of these balls, and how Jaden Daniels is starting to trust Terry McLaurin even more. If you look at the play from this past week with the slant on the 3-yard line, and he hits him there, man, that's right there is great. So, and the excitement that Terry's playing with, right? The fire that Terry McLaurin is playing with, the energy people are feeding off of. And Paul, I agree with you, man. Bobby Wagner is that guy too, because Bobby Wagner has brought leadership. They talked about how Bobby Wagner, the speech Bobby Wagner gave last week to this team, and which motivated them. Bobby Wagner, and I've always been a Bobby Wagner fan. Before I wanted Bobby Wagner like 2 years ago, right? 2 or 3 years ago, I wanted Bobby Wagner on this team. Mike, that's a good question. Here it is. While we talking about Bobby Wagner, and not, will they pay Bobby next season? They should pay Bobby Wagner, right? They haven't developed anybody else, right? They haven't developed the next linebacker. Bobby Wagner should get paid. He should stay there one more year and help teach. And guys, they should give him the money they're looking for. We know he's going to get the gold jacket. If the guy can still play, let him play.
Does Bobby Wagner want to coach next year instead of play, though? Because I was kind of getting the thought with him when he signed here that this was that this was him sort of starting to transition into that role, and he was going to play, yes, but he was going to be a coach on the field.
Yeah,
I mean, this would be a heck of a high to go out, helping turn around a team that was a losing operation, another season with over 100 tackles, another run in the playoffs. Be a heck of a way to go out for Bobby Wagner.
You'll be a heck of a way to go out. But if you take this team, if this team is winning, right, and you know what's coming back to this team and the organization, if you're Bobby Wagner,
he's playing way too well. He's playing way too well to give it up now.
Yeah.
Like he can finish even if he's finished the MBA that he said he was here for at Howard, that's just a free year to just concentrate on football. If he was balancing the MBA and football, this year would be even more, right? And like re-signing Bobby Wagner has to be priority 1 or 2 this offseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, don't mess this up. Don't mess up with the things that are like that guy's going to be fantastic. People are talking about 13 straight years with 100+ tackles. That applies to London Fletcher. That doesn't apply to Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner is a 150 tackle guy. Last year, he led the league with 180 tackles. You see what I'm saying? Like, they're only in the stat together because London Fletcher is the 100 tackle guy. Bobby Wagner's been elite forever. Forever. Like, it's not a season. It's not a season he doesn't touch 140 tackles, 130. You know, like that's 100 on the dot is child's play for him. So, hey, Bobby Wagner is absolutely number 1 and number 2.
Deluxe, you said it, man. Bobby don't want to come off the field when they are up in the blowout. Bobby's not looking like he wants to retire. He does not look like he wants to retire. He's having fun. He's having fun. Mike says, and these guys say something to play. And these guys got something to play for, and that's a job for next season. And Mike, we talked about that last week. Like, a lot of these dudes are 1-year contracts, right? A lot of these dudes are 1-year contracts. And they love, and the thing is, they love the atmosphere. They love to be in Washington, and it's kind of like not a ploy, but Adam Peters and them doing a great job of getting these guys who are on 1-year contracts, opportunities to showcase themselves, and maybe opportunity to stay here in Washington because there's a lot of 1-year guys that can stay.
Also know they're showcasing their talents for everybody else, so there's going to be bidders.
Yeah, but it's going to be money.
In terms of money.
Washington has that money, right? And they're going to have some money where they can let guys go.
They're going to spend this offseason.
Right. Like, with guys like, guys like, the guy we want to mention, his contract is up. Come on. We know that. That's free money right there. He ain't coming back. Right?
That's right.
You got rid of Emmanuel Forbes, who was on a rookie deal, right? You got rid of Jamin Davis. So they even freed up some more money to give some of these guys, right? Paul, that's a good question there. Before we got, do we re-sign Jeremy Chin? Don't know. Has Jeremy Chin done enough, right, to value himself and stay in Washington? So these next 4 games is much more than just the playoffs. These next 4 games are talking about guys who are playing, see if they want to stay in Washington.
Guys are playing for checks.
Jeremy Chin's going to have a lot of suitors. I think he's going to have a lot of suitors.
He's revived himself. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of guys that are playing really well. Like, Dante Fowler's not taking little boy money next year.
Keep Dante Fowler, because Dante Fowler is to me, he's that guy on defense, that pass rusher that you've been looking for, that guy that's been disrupting some things. If you want to name 2 guys, it's Louisville and Dante Fowler that's really brought the energy and excitement. You got Mikey who's coming along, right? You got Bobby Wagner who's always been high. You got a lot of guys that's coming along. And you know what we haven't said? And I hate to say it, I did not, and I know he's playing well. You don't hear too many people calling Johnny Newton's name. And he's a young guy. You don't hear too many people calling Deron Payne's name, right? Hey. But again, D-line are playing well enough that the linebackers, Louisville and Wagner, are cleaning everything else up.
That's true.
I mentioned what I mentioned about Newton early with the injury, the coming on and then taking the role. Like, flashes are cool, but like that's an everyday grind. Every majority of the plays. Now he has to take on a bigger role, and he had the one big hiccup in the end of that one game. You're not hearing his name as much as we would like to hear his name with all the next Aaron Donald type hype. I'm not even going to say the other guy's name. You guys know how I feel about him. I think you guys are getting robbed blind in your house. If you know that, if you figure that analogy out, but I'm gonna put my hands up to that one. I've been saying that for a year and a half.
Let's hit some of these comments before we get out of here, man.
All right.
Mike said we need to find a number 2 receiver in free agency.
I think so.
I think
and maybe
so.
and probably still need to draft one too, honestly.
Yeah, but
Mike, we got to get through this season first, Mike.
Yeah, you may have one in the house. Here you go. How about the trade for Jonathan Allen? It depends on health. Nobody wants spoiled goods. You got to see how healthy Jonathan Allen is. I think that trade was going to take place, truth be told. I think before he got hurt and the defense was playing terrible, I think that trade was going to happen, but you don't trade spoiled goods. I don't think the Jonathan Allen market is going down. He does have a year left on the contract. So,
I mean, that's the thing. He'll have value because of what he's produced in this league, but it isn't as high because he's coming off that injury. So, I mean, that's going to be an interesting question because that was my prediction for the season is that Allen would get traded in this upcoming offseason. So we'll see if that comes true or not.
He add value to this team because this team has some of these guys that disappeared while he was gone.
That's a fair point.
Fair point. He had value to this team.
Who was the one that said the 93?
Mo, you said it. Wole called you a hater. Wole didn't like it when you brought it up, but
I got 93 over 94 the whole time, even with.
I know you did, and that's why I'm doing this right here.
If Paul said this, man, we should draft Jimmy Horn Jr. All right,
Ooh.
wouldn't be bad. He's done some great things out in Colorado.
Yeah, he sure has.
A lot of talent there, man. Just
a lot of talent there.
Injury prone though, man. Already.
Yeah. Yes. Mike says we can't afford Allen, but Allen has 1 year on his deal, so he has to come back to Washington unless you trade him. So I can see him playing next year and them letting him walk and leave. So
possibly
that. But George, man, we had a great show, man. Great show.
Yes, we did. I want to thank you, Glenn and No, for joining me and helping me steer this ship without our fearless leader, Wole. Remember, folks, subscribe to us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcast, your other podcast platforms. Leave us a rate and review and 5 stars if that's what your particular podcast platform does. If you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed, like this video and subscribe so that we can help with the algorithms. And if you subscribe, you can comment when we're on YouTube as well. Follow All Burgundy and Gold Everything. That's ABG_everything with 3 R's on Twitter. X, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow all those. We'll always have content for you. This has been a wonderful bye-week show. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Mo. We'll see you guys next week when we'll be getting ourselves ready for the New Orleans Saints, and we'll have some other things to discuss. This has been All Burgundy and Gold Everything. Glenn, Mo, me, George, your homies. We're out.
Deuces.